that our government has paid private mercenaries to murder on our behalf, literally to murder on our behalf, to kill people without the benefit of trial, without the benefit of accusation, without the right to defend themselves, nothing. At the same time, we're learning this, and we're learning that over 100 people died while being interrogated by the CIA or their contractors. This from the report that came out of the Attorney General's office, Eric Holder's office yesterday, the day before yesterday, and widely publicized yesterday as people had a chance to read it. At the same time we're learning this, there is an explosive discussion happening in the United Kingdom, which is traveling all around the world, and that has to do with Kenny McCaskill, the judge in Scotland who freed one of the two Lockerbie bombers who was tried. The other one was actually acquitted. This one was convicted. And who freed him so that he could go home with his family and die. Now, the story is a little more complex than that, but first, let me just share with you Kenny McCaskill. He is the Scottish judge who freed this man. And here's what he had to say about his decision, why he did this.
It is a matter of great regret that Mr. Al McGrahy was received in such an inappropriate manner.
Maybe I should set this up. Here, Al McGrahy is the guy who was convicted of the Lockerbie bombing. And the son of Mr. Gaddafi came over to the UK sometime back, a few months ago, and said on Libyan TV, he negotiated the release of this guy. He brought him home in his private jet, and he set up a wild reception for the guy. This is the son of Muammar Gaddafi, Gaddafi, who is probably the heir apparent, almost certainly the heir apparent. He's British, educated, bon vivant, jet setter, and he's trying to build a case for himself to the Libyan people that he's their guy. And so he brings this guy back and says, I cut the deal. But the Scottish judge says no, there was no deal. In fact, nobody even talked to me about this. I just did it. Now, keep in mind, in Scotland now, 26 people this year have been sent home to die who had life sentences or sentences that would have caused them to otherwise die in prison. This is very common in the Scottish courts. So this has been politicized now by the son of Muammar Gaddafi, and politicized in a way that is blowing up in the face of Gordon Brown, the British Prime Minister, and yet the Scots, this is the front page of today's Financial Times. Gordon Brown, UK Prime Minister, was yesterday attacked for a cowardly refusal to condemn the release of the Lockerbie bomber and accused of undermining relations with the U.S., as the Scottish government stood firm behind its decision. So the Scots are saying, we did the right thing. Gordon Brown is refusing, the Prime Minister of England, of the United Kingdom, is refusing to say that they did the wrong thing. And I salute him for that, although we'll see if he buckles under the pressure. The story says Mr. Brown will come under intense pressure today to break his silence over the affair. It goes on to note, Mario Conti, the Archbishop of Glasgow, now the church weighs in, said, despite contrary voices, I believe it is a decision which will be a source of satisfaction for many Scots and one which will be respected in the international community. So the Scots are still proud of this, even though it's been played badly by Muammar Gaddafi's son, who took this guy, flew him back to Libya, and organized a party for him, basically. So anyhow, here's the judge. Now that you have the backstory, here's the judge from Scotland. Kenny McCaskill is his name.
It is a matter of great regret that Mr. Al McGrahy was received in such an inappropriate manner. It showed no compassion or sensitivity to the families of the 270 victims of Lockerbie. However, my decision was made following due process and according to the law of Scotland. I stand by the values and laws of Scotland. In Scotland, we are a people who pride ourselves on our humanity. It is viewed as a defining characteristic of Scotland and the Scottish people. The perpetration of an atrocity and outrage cannot and should not be a basis for losing sight of who we are the values we seek to uphold, and the faith and beliefs by which we seek to live.
There you go. That's Kenny McCaskill, who is the judge who released this fellow. And then, of course, this is the, you know,
it was my decision that Mr. Abdel Basit Ali Mohamed Al-Megrahi, convicted in 2001 for the Lockerbie bombing, now terminally ill with prostate cancer, be released on compassionate grounds and allowed to return to Libya to die.
To die. Okay, so this is, and the lead story on the front page of the Financial Times, the UK's, it's actually, they have more readers in the United States than they do in the UK, but the major international financial publication is about this. UK PM, there's Gordon Brown, the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, dragged into Lockerbie furor. The second of the three official editorials, voice of the Financial Times editorials, is called Lockerbie's Fallout. And they talk about how Mr. Gaddafi's son, Saif al-Islam Gaddafi, has boasted on Libyan TV over the weekend, which really blew this thing up, that Mr. Megrahi's situation was, quote, on the table in all commercial oil and gas agreements with Britain. So the son is saying this. The Brown government indignantly denies this. I'm quoting from the editorial here. And while confirming it advised the Scottish executive there was no impediment to Mr. Megrahi's transfer under an agreement Mr. Gaddafi and Tony Blair reached in 2007, that deal coincided with lucrative oil and gas deals for UK companies, just as Libya's release that year of Bulgarian nurses accused of infecting Libyan children with HIV was followed by a big arms deal with the French-led European consortium. So they're pointing out, you know, this is just a very, very, very sticky thing. And one of the fascinating editorial in today's Financial Times by Philip Stevens called the headline, Lockerbie Deal Exposes the Price of Realism. And he's talking about realpolitik. You know, this whole issue of the way that political work has been done by people like Henry Kissinger and Zbigniew Brzezinski. Brzezinski, the grand chess game. Kissinger, I think, coined the term realpolitik, R-E-A-L-P-O-T-O-L-I-K. And he says, he points out, Philip Stevens, Muammar Gaddafi's claim to diplomatic coup, this is, by the way, the anniversary of his 40 years of autocratic rule. His son Saif Gaddafi is claiming credit for this, that Megrahi was released from prison. And it's shaken the Scottish National Party. But he points out, he says, there are plenty of legal experts who believe that the conviction was safe beyond reasonable doubt, but on the other hand, there's many people who think that Megrahi actually was unfairly convicted. But that's not the point. That's not the point at all. The U.S., it should be said, and then he addresses, this is a British op-ed, Philip Stevens writing in the Financial Times. He says, the U.S., it should be said, should be careful in shouting too loudly about affronts to the rule of law. Its own recent contributions to faith in international justice have hardly been exemplary. Now, he points out that Lord Mandelson, the business secretary for Great Britain, met with Saif Gaddafi. And that, you know, oil, you know, he just, you know, he says, you know, this just all looks bad. But the Scots, I mean, the Scots, they understand the horror of oppression. The history of Scotland is a history of oppression by Great Britain in large part. You know, Braveheart, the old Mel Gibson movie, is sort of a little sample of that, I suppose. Although I always cringe at the idea of using pop culture movies as history examples. But if anybody understands what it's like to be aggrieved, to be tortured, to be tormented, to be the victims of horrific crimes by another government or by another people, if anybody understands that, the Scots do. So as Scotland continues to demonstrate compassion, which is the essence and goal of justice, is it now time for us to repudiate the brutality of the Bush years, as we learned yesterday afternoon that over 100 human beings were tortured to death based on memos written by Jay Bybee and John Yoo at the encouragement, the explicit encouragement of Vice President Cheney on television.